feel on myself. Brain food, brain sleep, neurology health. Brain love on me. I need you to assess, diagnose, and treat. Reveal what's underneath. Some brain love will give me peace. Prescribe me something, doc. Ooh, baby. Brain love on me. Brain love. 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 Brain love on me.
What is brain love to me? I think brain love has got to be the most important love ever. Loving what you do. And I think that's very important. You know, I'm a stand-up comic. I enjoy making people laugh. You know, I think when people come to see me, I give them brain love. I relax their minds and I entertain them. Even when I make love in bed, it's brain love. You have to make love to their mind, mentally, without not getting your dick that far. Just mentally make love to people's mind. Brain love could just be just how you feeling good. Because everything that feels good starts from the brain. You have to think positive. That's what brain love to me. Positive thinking of everything you do. Put your mind into everything you do. Make love to everything mentally. You know what I mean?
Oops, I need a producer for the show. Hey, guys, it's Dr. Delvina. It is not Therapy Thursday. It is a Tuesday. Sometimes I have to accommodate my guest. So, welcome to the Brain Love Podcast. This is our live show for the YouTube channel. We do this from time to time. And if you're not able to watch, or if you know someone who's not able to get on and watch live, I understand 5 o'clock is early for a lot of people. No problem at all, because this will be posted later to the audio podcast. Tonight, we're talking Black men and mental health. And the reason why we're discussing this topic is because suicide rates among Black men have been rising. According to the CDC, Black men ages 20 to 44 saw a significant increase in suicide rates from 2014 to 2019. Although Black men have lower suicide rates compared to white men overall, the rates are increasing faster amongst our Black men. There is a growing stream of Black men choosing to end their own lives. So, we want to talk about this and really the things that lead to the depression and lead to the sadness and lead to the loneliness, leads to the drug abuse. What is happening in the community that's leading to these situations where men are choosing to take their lives as opposed to seeking help or talking to someone or considering that, hey, maybe I need to go and see a psychiatrist or a therapy or something such as that. Little is written and even less is said about the prevalence of completed suicides amongst Black males, despite this alarming rate of fatal self-harm completed by Black males each year. Research by Ward and Collins revealed, that for the past 50 years, suicide rates have increased by nearly 30% for Black American males. Risk factors for Black males can look different than traditional markers of mental health concerns. So I have a Black man who's coming on this evening so that we can discuss what is it. I know this may sound silly, but what is it like being a Black man, and what are some of the things that they encounter that may be contributing to the situation? So help me to this. Welcome to the stage, Ed Doxson. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you this evening? And thank you for taking time. I'm sure you probably just got off work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate the bounce back. You're up in DC, yeah?
No. So I'm actually in Fort Lauderdale.
You're in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah. DC is home, but no, I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah.
Oh, you could have come into the studio and did this interview. We
Yeah.
could have
No.
did
No.
a
I'm
live
DC. Yeah.
interview.
DC's just home, but I'm actually in Fort Lauderdale. I've been here about 5 years. I work remote. But no, that's how I came across the podcast. I attended the Michael Blackson event a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall. So, all right. Well, we're having, I told you this will be a chat, a casual chat. I invited some Black men to check it out, to be in the audience. And if anyone wants to come on and join us, let me know and I'll send you an invite. But this is going to be a 20, 30-minute chat. We're not doing anything too extensive. First of all, let's introduce you. You've already said that are you from DC or Maryland?
DC. So born and raised in DC. That's home for me. Yeah.
Okay. And so, when you meet someone and they tell you where they're from, you start thinking about, at least for me, and being a psychiatrist, I start thinking about some psychosocial type determinants and what
Yeah.
that was like for someone in DC. And if I'm from Maryland, so of course, I've heard, DC is right there. So you hear a
Right.
lot in the news about DC and Baltimore.
Yeah.
Before I go on, you are an HR professional and podcast host. Your podcast is called Dreams by Any Means.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly, who are you and
Yeah.
why should you be a guest on the Brain Love podcast talking about Black men and mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I am a DC native, proud DC native, HBCU graduate, community leader back in DC, as well as here in the Broward community. Wherever I go, that's kind of like my passion to always give back. Like many Black men, I've experienced, some unfortunate events of, losing a lot of friends to the prison system, as well as homicide, drugs, and those type of things. And it's something that started early during my adolescent years, but as I get older, unfortunately, as you mentioned, you're familiar with DC and the culture and some of the unfortunate things that take place in DC, still continuing to experience that. And it's sometimes tough. You deal with survivor's remorse, you deal with loneliness, you deal with so many different things. So when I came across, the Brain Love podcast and saw Michael Blackson, and I keep up with you on Instagram, and learn about your background. And myself, I'll talk about it later. Never. I went to therapy like 2 times in grad school, but never really went to therapy. Coming from a very faith, religious background where that was kind of really shunned upon growing up. So I still haven't really in my adult years engaged in that. It's something I'm still open to, but I never really went down that path to see, how much that could really benefit me on a mental level.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned losing friends. Ti is someone who has revealed that he's had personal trauma, that he
Mm.
suffered from mental health issues that ultimately led to his arrest, the time that he illegally purchased firearms. He mentions a best friend, Philent Johnson, who died in his arms, and he states that resulted in him developing depression and also some paranoia.
Yeah.
My first question to you is this. So you said you've been to therapy twice. Why is it that all of these Black men admit to enduring psychological challenges and mental health challenges, but don't seek mental health treatment? Why do you think you don't still go? And, I don't want to assume it's because you don't feel you need it at this point in
Mhm.
time. So why is it such a hard thing for Black men to do, to go and seek mental health treatment?
Yeah, I think, my personal experience, as I mentioned earlier, was due to my upbringing. We relied on God for everything. We didn't look at therapists, counselors. It was you go talk to the pastors. There's a verse for everything, those type of things. And then myself, I think not being too exposed to it. So the times that I mentioned when I did go, you mentioned suicide in the beginning. My cousin Taquan, he had committed suicide back in 2017. And I was in grad school at Towson. That's where I went to grad school. And, when you're a grad student, you have free services. So I went to check it out, literally because that was kind of bothering me. And she ended up unpacking some other things that I didn't really realize that related to, losing my best friend at 15, and just relating that to so many different things in my life. Like I said, it was free services. So I took advantage of it. And once I graduated, I just never really went into it. And I think for me, I do have a great village that I'm grateful for, but they can't, solve and answer every question. And then also, too, I think as a Black man, we're just sometimes you understand with this world that, you're looked at a little different. You have to be tougher, depending on when you were raised, where you were raised, how you were raised. You get taught, the boys don't cry. You get taught, man up. You get taught to really just go with the flow and make it happen. But I think, we do feel it, when you get home at night and everything's over. You done left the fun social events and the basketball games, the fun part, and some of that stuff has to digest. And like I said, when it keeps happening, and you realize that this trauma is like something that's still there. So I think that was for me, and I think for me though, I'm gonna really say it's the religious piece for me, and it's something where, like I said, I firm believe in God. I know God can solve all things, but I know there are professionals that can do some things that God put in place to help with that. But for me, I really just I just always dive into the Bible. And I mean, from my personal experience, depending on the pastor and the leader, my pastor who passed away in October from Baltimore, the reason how I got so into that church is because I felt like it wasn't really preaching, it was more so counseling. His name was Bishop Melvin Easley, but Bishop Melvin Easley was also a CO in Baltimore City Jail. So I think that played a role in how he approached, delivering the word to people from all walks of life. So that's probably how we connected. But yeah, I think for me it's just that religious piece, and then like I said, sometimes just we get taught to man up, and you don't want to look soft and those type of things.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for explaining all of that. The term normalize is what came to mind for me as I heard you mentioning all the experiences you've been through. Losing a friend at 15, you said that person was murdered? They were shot and killed, or how did you
Yeah,
lose them?
yeah. So Ryan Harris, Ryan was actually shot and killed at 15 in DC. So this was in '08. This was in 10th grade. So that was
Mhm.
like, that was the first, I would say, that started off everything, the first real close friend I lost to a murder. And it was like from there, like everything just kept going, kept going, kept going. I guess, we were early in high school. Everyone is starting to, pick those routes where they're going to go the good way, the bad way, in between. And that kind of really set things off, where it just unfortunately became a trend, not even just in my neighborhood, but just in DC. And, DC being so small, and you're going to high schools, it's not really a neighborhood school. You meet people from all across the city. So my experience, I went to 5 high schools growing up. I wasn't
Wow.
a perfect kid, so but through that I
Oh,
was able.
you were getting in trouble a lot?
Yeah, yeah, I was just yeah. Before I ended up at McKinley, which I always credit to, really was my turning point. I was just around, I was the type of guy, come from a great family, religious family, mom and dad. But, you spend most of your time outside growing up. If you're going to school 8 to 4, after school programming. So I
Yeah.
found myself just roaming the city, getting into things, hanging with the wrong people. But unfortunately, luckily, it never, led to anything too bad.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing because we know things can happen that we are not meaning to happen.
Yeah.
And so you guys see there's something scrolling across the bottom. I have names here, and I should have added Jeezy to this list of names, but you see Kanye West,
Yeah.
Lil Wayne, DMX, Chance the Rapper, Chris Calico, Joe Budden, Kevin Gates, Danny Brown, Scarface. What do all of these people have in common? T.I., Kid Cudi, sorry, and B.O.B. What do these people all have in common? Audience, you guys can post. What do these people have in common? So, and while you guys are thinking about that, I want to play a clip from one of our shows because it's very important for people to understand that all men suffer from depression. Successful men, impoverished men, men with both parents, men who grew up with one parent, everyone suffers from depression. Depression and mental illness does not know age, gender, socioeconomic status. They don't know it doesn't know what kind of car you drive. Check this out.
I struggle with depression at times,
Okay.
and that's what I was trying to say. Especially because my job, I'm a neurologist in the hospital every day. Every day, I watch people die. One of the hardest one I had to deal with was an 18-year-old kid. The thing and then I had to talk to my entire team because each one of them struggled with it, right? Because that exact day, the father thanked us that we were fixing him. And in that same day, he dies. And it's always hard because you think people don't realize what doctors go through. And you sit back and you watch every second of everything you did. But what I tell my residents is human beings emotionally are like a cup. And over time, things fill up. And what you have to do what we do is you have to find that thing that helps you empty your cup. And whatever that is, you have to do it and be selfish about doing it.
All right. So that was a hard one
Yeah.
for the audience to watch. A lot of people, a lot of women in the audience cried. This is a woman's son. And that's Dr. Smart. He's a neurologist in Texas, and he was here visiting, and he came to the show. And at the beginning of the show, we invited him to be on the panel, and I'm so glad we did, because he showed us vulnerability. We could tell the men on stage were also some of them looked uneasy with that interaction. And I think it's because we don't allow men to process and be human.
Hmm.
Is there something that you guys are told, and I don't mean in your household, but I mean out in the community? Do people discourage you from crying and feeling your emotions and just letting yourself go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, even outside of the household, I mean, I have a lot of older men in my life, and I'm definitely grateful for that. And they tell me all the time, they like, like you're looked at to be, from a relationship standpoint, your woman's rock. It's like, it's cool to sometimes open up, but it says, you don't want to open up too much. And I've even had women, sometimes, tell me about their experiences and like, I don't really like that too much. So it's like you kind of want to pick and choose. Do I be extremely open and tap into this emotional side, or do I just not tap into it at all? And then I think it's just, you know, unfortunately, what we've experienced and kind of know is that, we're just looked at differently in this world, by people that don't look like us. So, I always think about this sometimes. You'll meet someone, say, hey, how you doing? Or like, hey, how's it going? They'll be like, I can't complain. He's like, even if I wanted to, nobody would care. So I think that's a mindset, for a lot of Black men, because we sometimes do feel like no one cares, or we sometimes do feel like we're fighting 10 times harder. I'll share a story even with my current job. When I lost one of my friends in October, he was killed, and they reached out and was like, hey, if you want to take some time off, let us know, this and the third. And of course, it took off for the funeral, but I know I'm not looked at the same way, in corporate America, as people don't look like me. And I think sometimes we just fear of showing any sign of weakness, that already puts us in a space when we already have other odds stacked against us, outside of that. So.
Wow. So you feel that because you took time off, that they may be looking at you like you're weak?
Yeah, like I mean, if I, of course, like I said, took for the funeral, but if I was to take off, extended time or something like that, it's like at the end of the day, the stuff has to get done. You're just thinking that because you're already thinking so much,
Mhm.
and I think that you're thinking too that everyone can't really relate to what you're, as far as like losing friends from homicide, maybe car accidents, sickness, those type of things. But and I'm not expecting them to give me that, I would say that counseling, but I think maybe just can't even relate to it, may not know what it feels like, to lose a friend to gun violence, or may assume, oh, if this person was killed by
Mhm.
gun violence, they must have been doing something wrong. They don't really maybe experience the stray bullets that are going through the neighborhoods, or the armed robberies that's just gone bad, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think that's always my mindset. Is just like, I'm gonna handle this outside of work, and I'm gonna take care of work when it needs to be taken care of.
Wow. I'm so glad that you brought that up, those examples of what people don't understand when we're having a situation. So, your friend was murdered, and you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned that you basically were saying that there might be some judgment, that
Yeah,
this person was killed, and may make automatic assumptions about where this person is from, the type
right.
of activity that they're involved in. July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And during this month, it's a way to raise awareness and advocate for mental health in the minority communities. It's celebrated to highlight the unique mental health challenges that are faced by people of ethnic, cultural, and racial who are in minority groups. And you just brought up a perfect example of some of the limitations that we have, or some of the things that have been ingrained in us since we were children.
Yeah,
If you talk about where you're from and what happens in your neighborhood at work, that might create a challenge for you, or people may look at you differently.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure. For sure. When I was in New York working in corporate America with the bank, and it's funny, it was a Black lady that worked there, and small world. I went to school, ended up going to school with her son, and her son actually ended up passing a car accident recently. But she was just asking me about everything I had going on, where I'm from. And she was just like, "Well, like, how did you get here?" Like, she was like, you just explained everything of DC, your friends. She's like, "How are you here in New York City working at one of the biggest financial institutions?" And
mhm.
I just looked, I was like, God, and then she was a firm believer in God, so we connected on that level. Definitely, all the time you think that. I mean, it is what it is, and that's what I will say. You sometimes think that like, oh, someone's going to think that, and it's funny. And I'm glad you mentioned that question because see, I don't just it's
Mhm.
not just a work thing. It's just from other people. People ask me, or someone may die, or someone may be like, well, how do you know this person? Because see, this person may have a total different reputation, with other people and in the community. But then with me, it's like I've never experienced that side of that person. And that's why I'm a firm believer that, with my outreach when it comes to average youth and different people, returning citizens, because I know everyone does have a good side to them. I think sometimes they're just in those bad situations and bad environments that they sometimes continue to keep tapping into the negative side.
Yeah. Yep. So you went to 5 different high schools.
Yeah, yeah. That was, yeah, 5 schools. That was my personal statement for college. 5 schools, 4 years.
Wow. I bet that was a powerful personal statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so after you graduated high school, you went straight to college or did you take time off?
Yep, yeah. I went right to Delaware State. My original plan was I wasn't going to college. Like, well, let me say, I wanted to go to Morehouse, stuff like that. But then when it came around time, I was I was pursuing this acting dream. I was telling my mom I was going to be the next Will Smith. So like I auditioned at Howard, and I was like having
Aw,
success. I did like some Shakespeare classes, and I was just
okay.
like, I'm not going to school. So actually, I got in the Alabama State Theater program. Then I came back home, and I remember telling my mom, I was like, I'm gonna just work, save some money up. And like literally, I joke about it to this day. My mom turned into Monique from Precious, like, and she just started going off. And she was just like, you need to go to school. She's like, it's not about the education. She's like, you need the development as a man to go away to school for these 4 years, meet new people, be around different environment. And
Mhm.
it was the best decision. I was supposed to go to Delaware State for just a semester and then transfer to like Morehouse or Hampton. But I got there and I fell in love with it. My uncle attended there. A lot of people from DC attended Dell State. So, it was like,
Really?
yeah, a lot of. I mean, it's almost like we joke and say it's like the 13th grade for DC. But that was that, and Dale State. I developed so much. That's where I really got involved heavily in leadership. Still to this day, my closest friends in my chat from Dale State. I'm getting ready to go to Vegas for one of my close friends' bachelor party tomorrow. And Damo, we went to McKinley together. Then we also went to Delaware State together. And the other 7 guys on the trip, we all went to Delaware State together. So definitely a very, very meaningful moment in my life.
Nice. So how did you escape? How did you get out? Was there peer pressure for you not to go to college, for you to get your, I don't know what they call it when someone goes to prison for the first time, was
Yeah.
there pressure for you to do that, or did people in your neighborhood want to see you succeed and encourage you to do what you wanted to do and didn't try to influence you to break the law and get in trouble?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great question. Growing up, like I mentioned, my uncle went to Delaware State. My uncle now was a district leader in DC working with Mayor Bowser. Very, very, very stand up guy. So, he was away working at Nike during that time in Portland, doing big things in the business area. So wasn't there physically, but he was there, for me. But more so, like he's always shown me how to do it instead of just telling me everything to do. So I was able to compare and contrast, being 16, 17, you're influenced by some of the guys that are dealing drugs, some of the guys that are the cool guys, so to speak. But then I'm able to compare it to my uncle, where it's like,
Mhm.
the guys in the neighborhood, they're dressed nice, they got money. But, Unc is sending me us pictures of he's with Snoop, Danny Thompson, Michael Jordan, so I'm early on like, hold on, this may be the better path, even though it's not, giving you the fruits at the moment. But also,
Mhm.
too, relationships I was able to learn early, to your point. Neighborhood's very small. It's not the worst neighborhood, but it just showed you the impact of DC. Is like we produce some bad, some kind of bad people just by how small it is. But early on, my family, is known. My grandmother, Deacon Hunter, my grandfather, my mom, Delano, like they're known like these are the great people of the neighborhood. So when I even would
Mm.
be with some of my friends, I remember they were about to do something. They were like, nah, man, we ain't about to let Ed. Like I literally remember one of my friends one time, he about to do stuff so crazy. And he's talking about my mom. He's like, nah, Salid ain't gonna get on me, And the thing is, my mom and his mom grew up together. My uncle and his uncle went to school together. So real close, tight neighborhood early on. And as a teen, you're like so conflicted and you're trying to prove to your friends that you're in and those type of things. But I commend them. And like I was talking to somebody about this when I look back on it now, we're 14, 15 years old. I think it was a thing where, a lot of them didn't have what I had. They didn't have the dad that was stern on them. They didn't have that loving family. So I think sometimes, the love that they had for me, they looked at me like, nah, you're not about to do this. And that was even the same with Ryan. Before Ryan died, I remember our last conversation was him kind of just telling me like, yeah, like, man, get away from this, go to school, come back around here, do your thing. He ended up dying like a week or two later. So yeah, I definitely think my friends early on, were just like, we love you enough to not let you go this way. Even though we are going this way, we're not going to bring you along with us. And those are true friends, because some people are like,
Mhm.
now come on and crash out with me.
Why do you think they didn't have an interest in trying to do what you were doing? You weren't able to get some of them to
So I think
follow
it
in
was
your footsteps?
some of them did, but I think it was the lack of reinforcement. When they went home, it
Mm,
was different. I experienced a lot of the stuff in schools, outside in the communities, but when I got back home, it's prayer on Wednesday, Bible study Friday, church every Sunday. My grandma, you staying over here, you going to church. I don't care what you gotta wear. Don't say you don't got no shoes, and no nothing. Like, you're coming to church.
ugh,
So I think that was the thing where it's like, because a lot of us went to the same schools, but
yeah,
then some of them made decisions in the neighborhood where they couldn't go to the schools because they had feuds with guys. Or even myself, it's like they would be doing things and I would get to school the next day and people looking at me crazy because I'm associated with them and I don't even
yeah,
know what they just did the night before.
yeah,
So,
guilty by association.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I think that's really what it was for them. And just like I said, as a teen, you're just so you're conflicting. Like I said, with my uncle Delano, a lot of people didn't have a Delano. Like, I mean, if you meet my uncle, he's a very stand-up guy, positive guy, very influential. So they had the other people at home, when you think about the power, you think about like Canaan, a lot of them had the Canaans in the house, trying to lead them the wrong way or in the neighborhood. And like I said,
Right.
I was able to see the long-term success of like, oh, uncle went to college, he worked for Nike, he's sending me emails, I'm getting 40% off shoes, he's with all these athletes and stuff. I'm like, this might actually be the way to go. So I think that's what was just the lack of those role models to reinforce that positive
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah. That's what's up. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Having role models and having people in your life who care enough about you to redirect you and to provide you that discipline. And you said the other thing that is so essential in every young person's life and everyone's life, but especially young children and teenagers, church, 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 Jesus Christ, God, putting that fear in our children's hearts about, hey, growing up, I was afraid to do certain things because I didn't want to break the 10 commandments. I didn't want to
Right,
break I didn't want to break a commandment.
right.
And especially the one about thou shall not disrespect thy parents or whatever. I know I'm
Yeah,
paraphrasing, but just respect for my parents and listening to my parents. And of course, there were times when I would listen to the little devil on my shoulder and I would do something I wasn't supposed to do, but I didn't dare ever yell at my parents. I never cursed my parents. I never slammed doors and acted a fool. I didn't do any of those things. And I think that is missing. And someone has a comment here
yeah,
that I have to emphasize. We no longer have a village, the neighborhood to help raise all the kids and keep them in check. And that is so, so true. And there was another comment before this one about Caribbean men, how they're taught to be hard. They're not allowed to feel. But I want to tell everyone, I want to tell all the brothers, you are allowed to feel. Break the narrative, break it, break the cycle. You don't have to walk around and act like you're a robot. Do not walk around and act like you're a robot. You don't have to do that because you just make things a lot more difficult for yourself. You make it harder for yourself and it's a vicious cycle. If you're not processing or talking to someone, you make it hard for you to avoid things like sadness and anxiety. Now, I want to switch gears for a minute, just because someone mentioned this having a village. So I'm going to show a video here. There's always a little bit of discord between the older generation and the younger generation. And so older generation people will abbreviate and say OG. I have a friend who doesn't like to be called an OG. He finds that disrespectful. But I want you guys, the audience, and also you, Ed, I want you to think about, is there a breakdown in communication between older men and younger men?
Sometimes our OGs will just check out. You know what? You're not listening. I've tried. No. I'm not saying all OGs. Relax, brother. We all here together. It's a conversation. Not OG, not the word OG. I'm sorry. Oh, this is a hip hop sign. I'm sorry, it's hip hop in my voice. But some of our, I understand language matters. What words matters. What we say matters. Yes, sir.
Wait, can I stop?
Bill, it's okay. Bill.
Yeah.
Let him finish, please.
Let him finish.
Go
ahead,
Well,
finish.
what I was just trying to say is that's a prime example right there, because I honestly respected everything that he had to say up here when he, and I'm very proud that you took that young man in and you helped raise him to become the man that he is today. No sarcasm. I mean that honestly. That was the point of my question. What happens when your village fails? You build up trust, then inconsistency comes in, and then we have that same kid that said, I did try, but unfortunately, when I did try, I was let down. And now I have to rebuild that trust in them.
Okay. So, God willing, you are continuing to live, Ed. You're becoming an older, more mature man. By the way, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Oh, you're still a baby. But I know that you mentor the youth. You're already doing it. You're already reaching out to those younger than you and helping them. And you even participated in some task force for the former mayor in DC, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
What is the difficulty between the older generation and the younger generation? You're kind of in the middle there.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's too. So I think there are a lot of great older men out there that are trying to lead the youth. Just going back to my uncle, we talked about this during college when, before the internet is what it is now on Instagram. But, the youth are so exposed now, where, they say kids think they know it all, but now today it's like with the internet and the access to so much information, influence. I think that's part of the thing where they kind of do think they know it all. But I think there's also, when I think about the youth and the OGs, I mean, the first thing we have to acknowledge is incarceration. So a lot of guys in the neighborhood have been taken away. A lot of guys in the neighborhood have been killed. I watched a documentary on Chicago and their gang violence years ago. I follow the music scene a lot. I'm a big hip hop fan. And one day I was just watching a documentary and one of the rappers was breaking down how some of the neighborhood beef started. And he was like, everything was cool. And he was like, all of the OGs got locked up. So there was no one to come in between and try to stop some of this conflict, because he was like, my dad and the people I'm beefing with, dad, they're cool, but we're not cool because, everyone else is locked up in there. So I think a lot of strong men have been taken away. And I just go back to it. I'm a big household person, because I think there are a lot of great strong men in the school systems, at the rec centers, football teams. When you think about down here in South Florida, all the different athletic programs and stuff like that. But, if you're going back home to these communities and going back home to these homes where there isn't any support, or you're being led wrong, I think that is difficult. And when you're a kid, you're going to gravitate usually to your mom, your dad, or your family members, your big brother. I know a lot of guys and my friends who took the wrong route just because they wanted to be like their big brother. So I don't think a lot of OGs are giving up. But I think also, too, when it comes to OGs, you have to be open. Like, for example, one of my mentors, Silas Grant in DC, he does a lot of great community work. And he was on my podcast and we were talking about something. He said, with this gun violence interruption work that he does, he one day had to talk to someone and say, if you don't see what they're doing, if you see what they're doing, the wrongdoing they're doing is stupid. He was like, you can't solve the problem. So, we'll say, oh, this person killed him over nothing, or oh, that person killed him over nothing. But it's like, no, it actually did mean something to them. And I give that example because I think sometimes as an OG, we go in and think like, oh, this is the way we go. Oh, why are they so stupid doing that? Well, first of all, it's like their brain isn't fully developed. Second of all, they don't have any experience. We can be 40, 35 plus saying what we would do because we're adults now. We've seen life, but they're
Mhm.
14, 15, and like many people, whatever family you come from, you're very influenced by entertainment, whether it's sports, whether it's rap. I think that, I used to be a person and not try to blame music, but the music today is so crazy. Just with the violence talk, the murder talk, or the actual events happening in the communities, and it turns into a song, you're dissing dead people. So I think it's just so many distractions now
Mhm.
where it's so hard for those OGs to really come in and play a role. And then, unfortunately, I think the OGs also have to know that you do have to have you have to have influence outside of just, I'm older. You have to have influence. For myself, I try to use the podcast, the Instagram, the different networking. I try to use those things to stay connected to them, because if
Mm-hmm.
it's with youth or anybody, it just really takes one point to connect them. When I go mentor the kids at Olson Middle School or volunteering back in DC, it's something simple of me just knowing the music that they're listening to, knowing the artists that they're listening to. That creates a thing where they open up their trust. Okay, what's going on. Just knowing that. So that's what I think, is the main thing. But yeah, I think there are a lot of, I know from my personal experience, I know a lot of great men doing a lot of great work in these communities. And still, while doing that great work, some of these young kids still go out and make those wrong decisions, because it's like you have them maybe for your AAU program, your after school program. But once they go back home and they go in those communities, man, it's tough. It's a rest in peace, Nipsey. I remember
Yeah.
an interview, he said something that stuck out. And he said, they were asking him getting involved in the gang. And I hope I'm saying the quote right, but he pretty much said, he had to decide excuse me, would I rather be at peace with myself and at war with the world, or at peace with the world and at war with myself? And like I said, as a kid, you want to be with your crew, you want to be
Yeah.
with your guys. And, you're 15 years old, someone kills one of your closest friends and you're close to them, you're going to have an emotional reaction. Unfortunately, you might go throw your life away because you might try to get retaliation. So I think, and then to the point of us having this conversation, as kids and youth, the therapy stuff is something that they need to get early. Because kids
Mm-hmm.
go through a lot. When I worked in a high school and started to learn some of these stories that kids are dealing with, and literally, 14-year-old boys kind of leaving their homes and trying to get a job, and mom may be involved in things. I had one student one time, his little sister had cancer, his dad was locked up, his brother got killed. So, I just think it's so much going on where it's like, I mean, you going through all that, you're really not trying to listen to nobody, because you kind
Yeah.
of figuring it out on your own, at that
Mm-hmm.
early age. And you think you are, think you're an adult, and you start to move like an adult, but then you make adult decisions that come with adult consequences.
Got it. You dropped a lot of gems in that last 2, 3 minutes. I love the reference you made to hip hop.
Yeah,
We say you are what you eat, but you are what you hear as well, and what you allow into
absolutely.
your environment. I think the worst that we had, or I had, I'm saying we, you're not my age. I could actually be your mama. Um, the worst I had was NWA, and NWA
Nah,
was more so about, outward anger toward the community, the police, not one another. And what I heard you say too was walk the walk, talk the talk. So if you want to give instruction to kids and teens, you got to demonstrate some of these things you're telling them to do or not to do. But I know there's probably a few exceptions. Maybe there's some older folks who were in gangs and they regretted being in gangs, or they went to prison and they learned their lesson. They got over that. Um, so I hear you on that. Um, so the next question I have for you, and we're going to get out of here in less than 10 minutes.
okay.
What is the barbershop talk about mental health and wellness? What is the barbershop talk about men accessing mental health treatment? You just mentioned that kids need it sooner and earlier. Um, and I think as a society and a community, we have to make some changes in what we provide in these neighborhoods and
Yeah.
these communities for kids. They need community health centers, they need community centers for recreation, they need after school programs. But what does the barbershop talk about mental health?
Yeah, I think it's a thing now with the power of the internet. A lot of people taking advantage of it. I see a lot of people always saying, hey, if I'm going to do therapy, it has to be a black therapist, or it has to be a woman like me, or it has to be a male like me. So I think there's more openness to it. I know from my circle of friends working in education, working in social services, there's so many services that are provided. But like I'm just going back to it, I think it's just the reinforcement piece of where, it's like, okay, this is something we're going to take advantage of. But I think it is something that is, being provided. But at the same token, it is something that's not taken seriously. Like I have one of my friends, he got into therapy. And, we sometimes, we'll be in the chat, people joking with him like, oh, this is the third, you're doing that, you're doing that. But it just goes back to, I think, just certain men just believe like, man, I'm a man's man and this is what I'm going through. Like I said, for myself, I've grown my relationship with God so much where, like I said, I'm not opposed to therapy, but I'm like, I kind of think I got it without it. But I also know I need to be open to it. But I
Mhm.
also know, like I said, everything doesn't work for everyone. But then also, like the other day, I was literally looking up therapy, like what's the difference between a therapist and a counselor. And the reason why I did that, because I was like, part of one of my, I would say, counseling for me is the gym. Like that's literally what's been keeping me, at peace with dealing with certain things. But then when it comes to therapy, which is on a deeper level, I'm like, nah, that has to be God, because it's a word, it's a spiritual thing, it's everything under the sun. But yeah, I think that the thing in the neighborhood, I mean, the communities, and like the point you bring up the music, I know a lot of people my age, younger, older, music is their therapy. You mentioned earlier the Scarfaces. You think about the JD, because myself, I mean, I tell you, Scarface is one of the greatest storytellers ever.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do just deal with, it being music or being
And
maybe
and
a
and I
substance.
want to interview you, Scarface, if someone shares
Yeah.
this with you. Come on the
Yeah.
couch.
Yeah, so I think that plays, but I love to see, what Charlemagne is doing, and get people that have, those bigger platforms and pushing therapy. I think it's just going to have to become a consistent thing. And like,
Mhm.
like I said, I keep going back to the family. I think family therapy, because, if the mom, the dad, whoever the guardian is really engaged in that and leading that, then I think, children will embrace it more, and then they'll start to spread it. And then it won't be, shunned upon, where, a group of guys that may be in between right and wrong decisions are going to the local community center to take advantage of therapy, and
Yep.
those type of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys have been listening, thank you for joining the show. You've heard us identify, and actually, Ed has identified several factors and why men, especially men who may come from cities like DC or areas like DC, Baltimore, Chicago, New York, Mount Vernon. I saw someone from Mount Vernon on here.
Okay.
And I'll also throw in there the Caribbean. The Caribbean, it's their culture to be hard and tough and not process emotions. You talked about many factors that can lead brothers to sadness and nervousness. And we didn't really say much about PTSD on this show. I just wanted to keep it more basic. But we also threw in some gems, things that you can do to help yourself. And before we go down that list and just review the list again, I have one last video I want to show you, because this video is about how you can manage. It's just 50 seconds about managing the challenges in your life, the mental health challenges.
It's going to come. Depression will come. That cloud will hang over. Anxiety will be there. But it's understanding, we as black men, what I think traditionally is, we haven't understood that there are tools at our disposal that we can use, but we haven't been able to utilize it. And hopefully forums like this, opportunities like this, where we can tell the younger brothers out there, all of us on here as well, there's some tools, there's some things, there's some exercises, there's some steps that you can take when those clouds arrive, because we're not in a world where everything's going to be perfect, right? There's going to be adversity, but are you disciplined enough, and are you man enough? Are you man enough to take the necessary steps to get access to those tools to help you through those dark times? And that's the key. And that's the key. And my brother, thank you for bringing that here, because you're going to help somebody here, and you're helping me, because I'm figuring out too.
So that guy who was talking, that's Broward State Attorney Harold Pryor. And I'm so glad that he said that. He basically told everyone we will all have moments of sadness. Some of us will develop things like major depressive disorder or depressive disorder. But you can do something to prevent yourself from cycling into a severe form of some type of mental illness. You can do things like you mentioned, Ed, going to the gym, exercising, ignoring the stigma and processing with other people, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable as a man. Let's make that normal. Let's normalize that. Growing your support network, listening to your elders and the older folks, been there, done that. My dad used to tell me, I can tell you everything you need to know. If you listen, you'll fly, you'll do well. If you don't, you'll fall on your face. And I never wanted to fall on my face. So for the most part, I was pretty compliant with my mom and dad. I listened. Um, and then also church, church. We started a Bible study group 2 Sundays ago on Zoom. My office started it, and we invite folks who want to be a part of it, who are not there to criticize and question and be negative and nasty, who just want to hear the word and learn what's in the Bible, and discuss with one another how to interpret that. So, Ed, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this conversation on what men can do to help themselves along and to get it going, to get, execute something so that they're addressing their mental health challenges?
Yeah, I would just say you got to embrace all of your emotions. For me, some days are on a high, some days are aren't. Like literally this morning, I woke up 5:30, get up early to go to the gym, and just going to music. Going back to music, I was playing a song and it had me thinking about my friend Khalid. I'm just 5:30 in the morning. I'm crying. I'm just like, but I'm
Mm,
literally crying, but I'm catching myself like, nah, like let's keep it going, let's keep it going. Go to the gym. But some days are high, some days are low, and I say that because my favorite athlete ever, Kobe Bryant. I listened to a lot of his old interviews, his podcasts, and it was one that he did on, I can't think of the exact podcast name, but he pretty much was just talking about embracing emotions. I've learned to embrace emotions,
mm,
allow them to be, they come and go, and then you choose what to do with them. So, every day you're not going to be able to be macho, man. Some days you're going to have to be like, man, like I'm down bad. I'm feeling it. I'm mad at the world. I'm walking around cussing. I'm trying to figure it out, and being transparent. Like these last 3 months, but specifically, like my pastor and my friend Khalid, they died the same day. Funeral was the
mm.
same day, and I just
Wow.
literally, I'm a everything's God wills person, but this was like, I'm like,
Yeah.
hold up, like what are you doing? Like that was the first time I ever really questioned God. Like this doesn't make sense. So when
Yeah.
you get into those spaces where what you normally rely on can't help you anymore, you start engaging in different things. You start questioning stuff. You start having so much anger. So to mention, like I said, being from DC, like being down here, like going to that beach every morning. When Kali died, the only thing that brought me peace, I went to the beach every night. And the first thing I prayed on the beach. Never experienced that because DC, we don't have a beach. And it was just such a different experience. And since I've been living here, I now understand how much nature relates to your mental health, human
Yes.
behavior in the social environment and all those things. So,
Yep.
yeah, I just think, if you're having a bad week, just let the week be bad, but don't let it
Mm.
become a consistent thing. Because it's just time to bounce back. It's like I keep going back to Kobe. That's my guy. But like Kobe was talking about the mama mentality. He said, if you could look in the mirror every day and said, I got a little bit better, that's enough.
All right, we're going to let that be the last word. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. Please share this episode with the men you love, the boys you love, the people in your life. Please, please share it. I think that we talked about a lot of different things in this short period of time, and there were a lot of gems here, man. Ed, thank you.
Yeah.
You're young,
Yeah,
you're 32, but you're insightful. It sounds like you created a path for yourself that you allowed others to help you toward. I'm glad you allowed these people to help you in your life. And I'm so glad you mentioned church and God and a higher power because that's where it's
absolutely.
at.
Yeah. Please let me know about the Bible study as well. I would love to learn about that.
I will send you the Zoom link. Yes, I'll
Okay.
send you the Zoom. Absolutely. So, people, please share the information for the podcast, and we'll see you next time. We're just going to do a little bit of outro music here, and we'll see you next time. Ed might be on again. Shoot.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
For more brain love on the couch with board certified psychiatrist Dr. Delvina. Make sure
Say
you
brain
follow
love,
on
Ed.
Instagram at
Brain love.
Dr. Delvina and at DRT Brain Love. Also, make sure you tune into the Brain Love podcast, airing each and every Sunday at 8 p.m. with a new episode on all podcast platforms.